shampoo for people with very greasy hair. She certainly did. Her long black hair was greasy enough to fry chips in. The green bottle at the back, said Dad cheerfully. And I want lipstick too, ordered the woman. Black lipstick. Bottom shelf next to the green eyeshadow, called Dad. Steve found it and took the old woman's money. She winked at Steve and shuffled off, muttering to herself about finding a shop that sold snail snot. Snail snot, thought Steve. Chapter 2. Steve wanted to ask his dad what snail snot was used for, but the bell above the door rang again. It was another customer, except there wasn't anyone there. That's odd, thought Steve. Just then he felt a nip on his ear. Yikes, he yelled. Then he heard a flutter of wings. shop. Chapter 4. I wish I could go to a fancy dress party, thought Steve. It would be much better than being stuck in this boring old shop. Just then, there was a thundering sound outside. was grinning. You know, Steve,